here we are. This is Sex Love Psychedelics, and I'm your host, Dr. Kat. Bringing you psychosexual conversations that will leave you intellectually turned on and hungry for more. But that actually brings me to this question, like, how do you see identity being an important process for people in their healing and in their healing process? You'll hear what I've heard is counter arguments of people who aren't marginalized, say that there's too many words and too many letters in the LGBTQI and all that stuff. And so listening to that, and then also holding space for the people who do want to have these, identities.
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, I was most interested in the importance of identity from your perspective and how you've been supporting people in their path, finding themselves or using words that work for them.
I mean, I think that this is important for my clients, regardless of what their gender and sexual orientation is. One of the things that really happens a lot with my cis het clients is permission giving, the ability to engage in their bodies and with their sexual selves in ways that fit for them is also extremely healing. I think just having permission to be who you are as a sexual person, like what you like as a sexual person is healing, and that cuts across gender and sexual orientation, period. Because society says sex looks like a very particular thing.
Yeah.
And that if you are queer, if you're not queer, if you are a cis het man, then sex must look like this, right? And it's also like, it's so limiting. So often with clients, regardless of sexual orientation, there's places that they want to explore that bring excitement to them and arousal to them. But it's like, whether it's anal, butt stuff, that's one of the big things. Like, so many people want to do butt stuff. But if they feel like I can't do butt stuff because butt stuff is only for these people, or butt stuff means this, and or have had partners that have shamed them for desire to do butt stuff. And so just being like, no, actually, yeah, you can do that. And let's talk about how you two need to talk about this so it works for your relationship and what you're engaging in sexually. And so coming back to the question, I think it's just permission to own fully your sexuality, period, for everyone. What is it that I like? What is this thing that I always wanted to do? What is this thing that I always wanted to try? How can I experience that? And how can that be okay? And if it's not okay with this person that I'm with, how can I find the right person that is okay to do it with? Because I don't need to be with this person here.
Yeah. And, as I'm listening to you talk, it's also kind of like creates a sense of safety when other people can identify and validate, that they have a similar experience too. Because when demisexual or asexual, started becoming something that was more talked about, more people were like, oh, it's okay for me to not feel sexual or not want sex, but still enjoy pleasure or kissing my partner, or, oh, it's okay if I'm only sexually desiring somebody in this context, but not in this context. And so how much we can feel more fear of exclusion or rejection when we're the only person who is feeling a certain way.
And I think that, coming back to your question about identity, that is one thing that the so many labels or whatever helps with.
Yeah.
I think that is something that the so many labels helps with. It helps people to be like, oh, I'm not the only one. My one journey that I can tell you about is my journey to queerness. And I didn't identify as queer for so long because I thought it had to look like something that was prescribed to me, right? Or I use the term queer over bisexual. I really don't identify with the term bisexual, because when I think of bisexual, I think of like spring break, like MTV Spring Break, like being drunk and like tongue kissing in a triangle, and that just did not fit for me. And when I found the term androphile, I was like, oh, okay, here we are. This is what makes sense to me, right? And so when people ask me about my queerness, what I'll say is I'm attracted to masculinity regardless of the genitals that are attached, right? Masculine energy regardless of the genitals that are attached. And there could be some play or some interest in like femme or femininity, but like there's this fluidity that I did not see described to me when I heard the term bisexual. So I do think it's really important for folks to have access to terms just to open up this knowledge that you're not the only one, or it's more than what we are told or prescribed or proscribed on TV.
Yeah, which can also really block our internal exploration too. I had clients who, I've seen this multiple times, where there was a part of them that felt disconnected from their body and sad, but they couldn't connect to why until they started started meeting people who were non-binary or trans. But then there was still a block inside of them that prevented them from going into the space of questioning that. And it was actually with psychedelic therapy or ketamine-assisted therapy that allowed them to be able to look at that more in a safer space.
Right.
What is that you work with psychedelics?
With ketamine, yeah.
With ketamine, yeah. Have you seen similar? What does that look like in your office?
Yeah, 100%. I've had clients, not just one, but multiple clients that have had this a coming out around like, oh, now this thing is that's always been there. I can like give voice to it or I can acknowledge it and it can feel safe. Yeah, I think psychedelics, but I also think psychedelics kind of help you blur the lines, right?
Yeah.
And find yourself in the blurriness because I don't think that anyone is necessarily staunchly in any category. This is my personal opinion. I'm in a very queer community, and so it might just be my lens and my bubble. And I'm also in the Bay Area, so it might just be my lens and my bubble, but I have not found that so it's like this is what it is, and it's staunchly this, and it has to, I'm like, it's always kind of blurry. There's always an exception. Um, so I found that when we're doing CAP work, ketamine assisted psychotherapy, people find themselves in not just sexually or gender wise, but find so many aspects of themselves in these blurred lines and are able to like acknowledge that, take that in, bring that with them at the end of the journey. And then we'll get to work with that.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for tuning in, lovers. And if you want to experience more ecstasy and sexual liberation, head over to sexlovepsychedelics.com and learn about how you can join me for any one of my online or live events. And while you're there, grab my free guide on sex and psychedelics. Remember, this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please contact your healthcare provider and local law before pursuing any of the products or psychedelics discussed. And one final note here. I make this show specifically for you. If you're loving the show, then be sure to leave me a review in iTunes or Spotify to let me know. Happy to be here and happy to serve. I'll see you next time on Sex Love Psychedelics.